Hello and welcome to Value Stream Evolution, a new series in partnership with TechStrong TV and the Value Stream Management Consortium. And this is our first live roundtable. I am your host, Helen, Beal, Chair of the Value Stream Management Consortium and Chief Ambassador at DevOps Institute. We'll do some intros in a minute. I'm just going to start with a little bit of housekeeping while everyone gets online and things you need to know. We are live, as I said, it's a live session today. We are recording it. But you can chat with us at any time. I quite like chatting in the chat, so you'll see me ask a question, I'm sure, in a minute, and get you chatting with us. And we'll take questions live throughout the broadcast today as well. It is being recorded, so you will get a link to the recording following the session as well. Other things you need to know, in your sort of control panel, you can see things like handouts. If you go to handouts, you'll see the State of Value Stream Management Report there, which is what we're going to be talking about today. That's our research that we published from the consortium on July the 15th. So we're going to be talking about that today with Eveline in particular, who was the co-lead on the research, and with two of the directors and founders of the consortium, who will introduce themselves in a minute. And hello, people from Italy and from Spain, lovely to have you here, and Colin from Dallas. Final thing in the housekeeping, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon vouchers today, so I'm going to do that at the end. Also in the chat, you can see pinned at the top where you can go to become a Value Stream Management Consortium member, and you can bookmark the whole series. This is actually the second in the series, so the first was a pre-recorded and broadcast session. But today we're live, so I think it's time we probably met our guests. So let's start with Eveline. Could you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Sure. Helen, you're a natural at this. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Eveline Oerhlich is my name. I wear many hats. In this particular situation, I wear the hat of an analyst in the topic of IT automation. I've been doing that, seems like all of my life, but I'm also Chief Research Officer at the DevOps Institute. Before that, I spent many, many years at Forrester Research as Vice President and Research Director. I'm the mother of 2 great daughters, and I'm traveling to the United States the first time this coming Sunday, and I am scared.
And also excited, I'm sure.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Brian, why don't you tell the audience about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Helen. It's great to be here. And Eveline, there's nothing to be scared of over here in the States. We're excited to welcome you, and hopefully all the borders will be opening up here shortly. I'm the head of product for HCL Software DevOps. HCL Software is relatively new to the enterprise software business, but believe it or not, we're about 5 years in, and it's a $1.2 billion enterprise software business unit of HCL Technologies. And within DevOps, we have a whole suite of enterprise products, everything from a VSM platform with our HCL Accelerate product all the way through planning, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and application security. So really a well-rounded portfolio of best-of-breed products. I'm about a little over 20 years into this industry, about 10 years really focused on DevOps and VSM, and it's just, it seems like each day kind of gets better. When I think back of, where we've come from and where we're going, we've been talking about these types of concepts for, probably 5-6 years now. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like, slowly and then all at once. And to be at this stage where we have a Value Stream Management Consortium and a State of Value Stream Management Report, it's just an amazing time to be part of this cycle.
Very exciting, isn't it? I think we're going to be talking about futures as well today and what we hope to see. But before we get on to that, let's hear from Richard.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Richard Knaster, and I'm Chief Scientist at Digital AI. And our company was formed from 5 different companies having the best of breed technology in enterprise agile planning. You probably heard of CloudNet version 1, enterprise DevOps, ZVA Labs, release and deploy, app protection from Arcsan, continuous testing from Experitest, and analytics from Numerify. And we've brought these 5 companies together to provide a value stream management solution. And so my role is to help with thought leadership for the platform, help with process and helping driving the product, working with customers. And I've been in software development for about 30 years, and it's a passion of mine. And I love understanding customers' needs and finding out how we can solve those needs. Prior to working for Digital AI, I was a methodologist and principal consultant at Scaled Agile, where I helped develop many versions of the Scaled Agile framework, as well as helping companies make their environments, more, helping improve flow there, helping make it a more engaging and fun environment. So I'll just leave it at that, because I think you guys want to hear about our report, not so much about us.
I loved your last comment about making work and everything a more fun and engaging environment. It's absolutely my mission to bring joy to work, and VSM is absolutely key to that, I think. I just want to say hello to the audience. I mean, just seeing like where everyone's coming from. We have Nick Blaney. Lovely to see you, Nick. It's been a while. Joining us from Deutschland, Eveline. We've got New Zealand, we've got Dallas, we've got Spain, we've got Los Angeles, Canada, Poland, South Africa, Honduras, Chile. We've got people from all over the place, which is great. And I just asked the audience if they've read the report. So Vanessa has, and I'm going to ask whether they have any questions. Ralph says, was that not a prerequisite? Anyway, I will likely get distracted by the audience quite a lot, but let's get started with some discussion first. So Eveline, you do obviously most of your career, you've been doing research, you do a lot of it. Was there anything that was different about this research initiative to other ones that you tend to work with?
Yeah, I think Richard already used the word fun. I think it was fun because there were so many different people working in bringing their thoughts together. I think that was one. Industry analysts always collaborate, of course, but sometimes it makes it difficult to actually do that across the different vendors. And that, I think, was very unique because of the consortium. So we had all the different vendor people, product owners, thought leaders, folks like Richard and Brian and many, many others who were there. I think that was the second. And last but not least, we had you, Helen. I mean, I like you and I love you. But the way you work and the way you think and the way you inspire and the way you have kind of shifted my thinking in many things, I think that was extraordinary. So again, that was absolutely beautiful, bringing us all together. And that has been very unique. As an analyst, sometimes you get really kind of stuck in boring research. This was none of that.
Thank you so much. I promise I wasn't fishing for compliments with that question.
No, I'll give you one anyway.
I think just to add to that, I think it's a very unique experience to be working with your competitors in a collaborative way. And I think it just goes to show you that, even with competition, there could be cooperation. And, what's great is making some new friends at competitors and also finding out that some of the people that worked for my competition also work for the same company as myself at IBM. So that was interesting. And I think it's been an amazing experience working together and collaborating to provide information that everyone needs to implement value stream management. It's an area that I'm really passionate about, and this research was great to really understand what's happening in the marketplace. And I know it's going to help all the vendors as well as all the community out there. And again, it's been wonderful working with Helen and Eveline. I know she's not fishing for compliments, but she deserves it.
Thank you. I just want to say a little bit about the consortium, actually, because I think this idea of the community and competition and co-opetition is so important. So for the audience's benefit, the Value Stream Management Consortium was launched on March 3rd of this year. The founder members, we've got two of them represented today. We have HCL Software and Digital.ai, TaskTop, Lutora and ServiceNow are also founder members. They were on the first in this series, a recorded session that you can find in the link that I put at the top of the chat. But Brian and Richard I think was in Bermuda at the time, so he wasn't able to join that one. So he joined this one instead. And Brian also wasn't able to join that first one, so he's here today. But we are, as the consortium, we're registered in Colorado as a not-for-profit trade association, and that means we're open to all, and we are set up to create this environment as a community. When us founder members as vendors were working together initially, one of the things we really wanted was to bring more enterprise people on board as well. But any of you that, and I know some of the audience have worked in sales, any of you that worked in sales will know how hard it is sometimes to sell something like membership to an enterprise and get on the PSL or the preferred supplier list and things like that. So what we did is we kind of shortcutted it because we didn't want to slow down, and we've got some board advisors, and you'll actually meet 3 of the board advisors on the next one in these series. So you can meet Brian Finster and Sejar Amin and Gary Rupp, who is also in August about to publish, I believe, the first book of its kind, which is Driving DevOps with Value Stream Management, that we've all had the pleasure to have a pre-sneak peek at, which has been great. So that was probably enough divergence for the time being. Back to Eveline. As I said, those of you who don't know Eveline, I know lots of you do. John Rakowski said hello to you. I don't know if you saw that in the chat, Eveline, but Eveline spent most of her career in research. And in last year, she published with Research in Action a report on value stream management. And in it, she said very clearly and boldly that value stream management is not a nice to do, it is a must do. And I really wanted to drill down with Eveline why you felt that was such an important statement to make and how you qualify it.
Yeah, so, value is always in the eyes of the beholder. And throughout the journey of research in the different topics of DevOps and automation and 3 or other 4-letter acronym topics, I found by talking to enterprises that each individual has a different perspective on value, right? Depending on where they sit in the life cycle or in the value chain. But ultimately, the value which we are owning and needing to deliver is for those who we are delivering it for, which is either a patient, a customer, a client, or anything like that. And so as we are entering and we are transforming into this organization of delivering outcomes to our customers or patients or clients, and particularly during the pandemic, that was incredibly important. The stream of and the different pieces we do is of course important, but what is important is what comes out at the end. And we don't have a choice to actually work on that entire value stream. That's the one point. The second one is that brings people together. I think the word connection, collaboration, sometimes gets a little bit lost, and people think that, I just have to connect and collaborate. Well, that's true, but there's multiple challenges with that. If I connect with too many people, then I have a connection overload. I have a collaboration overload. If I am completely unconnected, then I am isolated. But if I have a collaboration model of a hub and spoke, I might wait for some decisions. So I think that's the second reason why we have no choice, because when we start thinking about connecting and collaborating, we have to think of it from our perspective of value and how do we add to the end-to-end perspective. That's why I said it's not a choice, it's a must.
Brian, your thoughts on that?
100% agree. Yeah, I look at this as all an evolution, right? If you look at 2010, when the term DevOps came about, folks were doing DevOps prior to the term. Just like today, VSM is now recognized in the industry as a mainstream concept, but folks have been doing VSM for years, decades, you could argue. Richard, or I guess I should say, as I look at that evolution, we kind of look at it as at least 3 chapters here, right? We've got, going back almost 20 years now, the agile wave. That really did a great job from the time we have an idea to the time the coding's done. Of course, it created a new bottleneck of how do we get that done code into production, into the hands of the customers. And that's really where DevOps picked up where Agile left off. We've been framing that as called a DevOps 1.0 or a day one DevOps. And really what we have here, I think, is that third chapter, a DevOps day 2 or value stream management, where it's really looking at an umbrella from start to finish, incorporating all of those best practices that Agile and DevOps and Lean have provided us, but providing a whole comprehensive methodology at looking at all of those moving parts. And then on top of it, we've got this innovation happening with these value stream management platforms. And that brings me back to Richard's earlier points around co-opetition, right? It is a little unique to have all of these vendors collaborating so closely, but the way I'm looking at it is it's really about product market fit, or, in Jeffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm, I don't think we've jumped the chasm yet from a VSM standpoint. How do you get from kind of early adoption to mainstream adoption? And to me, that's all about social proof. It's having the evidence of the ROI to these concepts. And that brings us back to this value stream management report, right? It's starting to create that baseline, present those data points that shows this is working for organizations. There's correlation between high performance and value stream management practices. But we're still, in those early stages, and we've all got to collaborate together to get us over that chasm.
And thank you for bringing us around to the report. You kind of were touching on another couple of questions, but I think we'll maybe come back to them and dive into the report now, since we're a quarter in already. I'm not going to ask you what your key takeaways are yet. I'm going to actually ask you a different question because of something Brian just said, which was about this kind of the social proof that's going to help us cross the chasm. So this was the first report of its kind, the inaugural State of DevOps, Value Stream Management report, and one that we hope to build on year. So we're going to be looking for trends, but we immediately picked up a few things that people will find in the wow moments, as we've called them. So they're the moments that made us go wow when we saw the data and we found the things that we hoped we might see, but we weren't sure. And a big one for me was when we did the data crunch and discovered that the higher performing organizations were doing value stream management practices. So they are doing things like value stream mapping, and they are doing things like measuring flow and trying to understand what value is. So Richard, was that a surprise to you that was happening? What were your thoughts when you discovered that?
So was it a surprise to me about that most of the organizations were doing value stream mapping?
That the higher performing organizations are more likely to be practicing value stream management.
That's not a surprise to me, but it was really heartening to see that was the case. Because we all know that even though Agile has been awesome and DevOps have been great as well, what's still missing was the focus on the entire flow of what's required to bring a product or service to life. And so that doesn't surprise me. And, you have to look at where the bottlenecks are. And sometimes the bottlenecks are right in the front of the process. For example, it might take a year to get a business case approved to go forward with a product or even some new features. So to me, it's what I've observed in the field. And it was great to see that validated by actual data from our report. And that's the thing that I love about the research, is now that we have data, it's just not what we think. It is now what we're seeing is getting the actual data to prove. And I think a lot of what we do in value stream management is also to take an hypothesis-driven approach to developing solutions. And so I think it's really aligned with that.
Brian, what did you think when you saw that data, that bar graph that showed quite a significant advantage, if you like, or advance with the high-performing organizations?
Yeah, no, it kind of reinforced my belief, that the ROI around DevOps is so obvious. There's so much of automation rooted in traditional DevOps. And as I look at value stream management, there's a natural tendency to think about flow and efficiency and improving the cost aspects of it. But really, VSM is much more than just about flow, right? We're looking at ensuring that we've got the business results, the outcomes, along with those efficiencies. And to Richard's point, it's about looking at organization and funding and streamlining the way that we can move quickly on new ideas, better organizational structures, getting out of these silos. When you think about those best practices, there's no doubt it would influence, the profitability and success of these organizations.
Yeah. For me, there's a duality, as I described it in the last one of these, around value stream management, which is expressed in the report. So the report basically has 4 parts to the findings. We talk about the organizational considerations of value stream management, then we talk about value stream mapping, then we talk about flow, and then we talk about value realization. I had a really interesting conversation just yesterday, actually, with Brian Finster about this, and he struck on the fact that flow is really about output. whereas realization is really about outcomes. And when we join those two together, that's when we've got the most powerful set of metrics, I think. I want to reverse a little bit to something else that Brian said earlier. So Brian talked about the agile journey, the DevOps journey, and now the VSM journey, where we've sort of been over the last 15 to 20 years. And I have done umpteen presentations now where I've talked about VSM being the next generation of DevOps. But I think let's go back a little bit, because Value Stream Management and Lean go back even further. And I think for the benefit of the audience, it might be worth talking about what Value Stream Management used to mean versus what Value Stream Management means today, and then perhaps wrapping DevOps back into that, because part of me, and I've just started to visualize this in some other slides, but part of me now thinks that DevOps is actually, if you like, the handbook of interventions for Value Stream Management. So Value Stream Management sets the framework or the umbrella of what we're trying to do, and then when we find those constraints, we look to the DevOps catalog, if you like, for the thing that we should do to release that space. So Eveline, do you want to start us off with what's changed about Value Stream Management? What is it? What's different about Value Stream Management in 2021 than was happening in 2015? What's different?
I think there is more roles who are now participating in that, at least from a curiosity perspective. I also think, and this is something which we've always discussed at Forrester while I was still there, it's this group who used to be functional and then in some organizations actually turned dysfunctional, which is the PMO. If you think about the PMO, right, what their ownership was to begin with is to manage kind of the different projects they were given or they were signing up for, to take them through from ideation to whatever, so that they are actually delivering what we promised. Well, that PMO became non-existent, and they vanished, and a lot of other people kind of took over. Application developers became very important, of course. Operations people, sysadmins, I'm one of them, a former sysadmin. My role had changed into something more of an SRE or some of a DevOps engineer or something like that. So a lot of the roles have changed since 2015. And I think we found that in the report as well, right, Helen? And remember when we tried to define the different roles, and we only found a few people who actually have value stream managers or value stream leaders or flowologists or whatever those different types of names we have. So I think that's the biggest thing. We have different roles and different perspectives who are now finally realizing that they need to work together. Where in 2015, we still had a lot of silos. People were trying to do DevOps, and people were trying to do DevOps from the tools perspective, but not from the philosophy. So they it's like insanity, trying to do the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, using some kind of an automation tool. And I think that's different today. There's different philosophy. Any other thoughts? What do you guys think?
I think Rich has got some thoughts as well here.
Yeah, I think what's a big difference now is that 5 years ago, I don't think we knew how to apply value stream management to software development. I mean, it's still a very nascent, practice, value stream management. And we're really first understanding how to map value streams, how to really understand the flow within value streams. And I think that, the value streams in manufacturing are quite different than the value streams in software development. And there are different types of value streams that we have to worry about, such as the operational or business value streams and development value streams and how they connect together. I think that there's much more complexity in the value streams than or maybe present in manufacturing. So I think it's our understanding of value stream management is first still in its infancy and trying to how to best apply that. And the fact that now, the tooling that we now have, because one of the things that we found in our report is that many organizations just do value stream mapping once, it's once and done. And we need to be able to instrument that so that we can see how are our value streams performing. And so we can see that in real time, and then we can drill down on the areas where we're seeing those bottlenecks. And that wasn't possible just a few years ago.
And I definitely want to spend a bit more time actually on value stream mapping as well, because I think, as you say, it's very much an emerging market, and part of the role of the consortium is really to nurture a market that we all feel passionately has the promise to be really influential in terms of us moving into that next golden age that Carlota Perez talks about. So a lot of people new to the space are familiar or have heard of value stream mapping and conflate it with value stream management, and we make this statement in the report. We also have an implementation map in the report, which has about, I think, 8 or 9 steps in it, of which one is value stream mapping. And we're trying to show that it is an essential step, but it's not by any means all that it's about. But my particular presentations where I talk about why value stream management is the next generation of DevOps really came from my experience as a consultant, which were reflected in the report, that I would do a lot of value stream mapping with people to try and get them on their DevOps journey, try and build an investment case, try and help them build a hypothesis backlog of things that they could do for improvement. And as we discovered in the report, there is this problem with standard value stream mapping because it's a very human resource intensive exercise that it only happens once. And the other side of what I was finding really hard was the metrics. So, we have sets of metrics like DORA that are very well established, but they're kind of limited in some respects as well. It's very openly expressed in Accelerate that they know that lead time only starts at code commit, and they recognize that we have a whole fuzzy front end and lots of other things are happening there. So for me, the value stream mapping is really important. But people need to understand that value stream mapping is not value stream management. Value stream mapping is just one of the steps in what we do in value stream management. And just to get back to the research in particular, some more things we found around value stream mapping that I found really interesting is we asked people where they found the value in value stream mapping and where they found the challenges. And we got some really interesting answers. Again, they weren't huge surprises. But what I thought was telling, and one of the trends that I want to look for as we move forward over the years, is that most people found the value in the human-centric activities. So sitting in a room together, getting to know each other, understanding each other's work, building empathy, bonding, setting clarity around vision. And similarly with the challenges, most of the challenges were around getting together, getting support to do it. But we gave people answers that were around data. And we talk a lot in DevOps about being data-driven. Increasingly, I'm talking about being insights-driven. But they were the lower level answers. And I think that shows, I think it's evidence that the market is still needing to build this capability, just as Richard was talking about. So as people get more into value stream management, they'll start seeing it as something that's going to help them get that data, automate that map, have that data available to them real time to start getting instant insights on. Not something they have to spend 2 months trying to get people in a room and then multiple days doing it and then never really go back and revisit. Richard, I went on a bit there, but I know you had something else you wanted to say as well.
Yes, so I understand how you're equating value stream management as being the next step in DevOps. But I also like to provide an alternate viewpoint, and that is I see value stream management as being broader than just DevOps. And I think what's really exciting now is that we look at the value streams as a network, a value stream network where we have business value streams connecting with development value streams, and we're really able to show how the outputs that we create result in business outcomes. And all too often, and I know the data maybe doesn't reflect this necessarily, I still think we're in the feature factory mode where we're getting great at developing lots of features and putting them out there, but we're also creating lots of waste because organizations are still seeing that the needle isn't moving from those features. Now, if we're able to take some business data, like Pendo data, and able to show, did anyone find the feature? Are they finding the feature useful? Now, when we implemented that feature, did we actually see a difference in our business? For example, if you're creating let's say that you're working for Comcast and have a website, did you get more buyers of your different services or something like that? Being able to measure and instrument that and then show how that connects with the development data, I think is really a game changer that just wasn't available before. We can now connect to all these different data sources more easily than we could before.
I want to chime into something, Richard, you said. I absolutely agree with what you said, that it's much bigger, it is bigger than DevOps. But we also need to make sure that we have, and you at the consortium, that you have practical routes to value, right? That there are measurable and easy to take steps for those who are actually going to implement it. And I think that has been the challenge ever since we started out this research. I remember talking on inquiries with customers, they say, it's just overwhelming. I don't know where to start. And as Helen pointed out, the easy thing is to make the human connection when we get into a room. But if you remember, enterprises today, they don't have time to get into a room and do a kumbaya with a glass of tea or coffee, because they must do their work. They've got incidents, they've got changes, they've got bugs, they've got blah, blah, blah to do. So I want to make sure that we don't over position this end-to-end thing that makes it too big for people to consume, and that we make sure that there are key roles who have, even so, because they're still in their day job in some silos. If we want it or not, there are still silos, but the silos are connected, and that we bring critical and practical steps to them, like journey mapping. And we know that that is the one everybody kind of latches onto because it is doable, right? I can do sticky notes of the same color. I did that with a very large oil and gas. They loved it. They did it one time without me. They haven't never done it before. And so that's something we really have to be careful about.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Problem.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also think that we can look at the broader picture without overcomplicating things.
Yeah.
Bringing in data from Pendo, showing our OKRs and other business data, and then being able to see if there is a correlation between the outputs that we did and the business outcomes are happening. I don't think that requires a lot of complexity. We don't have to necessarily map the entire value streams, but we can start bringing together business data with development data so we can see a larger picture. But I do agree that we need to scope these things so that it's digestible as we implement them.
And I think what Evelyn describes is the perennial problem that we have now that we're being digitally disrupted. What we're all trying to do is transition from ways of working to a new way of working and change and improve what we do. And the most common phrase I ever heard probably as a consultant is we just can't find the time to save time. There just isn't that much bandwidth in our day-to-day work. But you've also heard phrases like we need to go slow in order to go faster. We see it in the Phoenix project. They stop all change in order to be able to spend some time on improving some things. So, it's nature. It's not a VSM problem. It's an improvement problem, I think. Interestingly, I wanted to talk about something that I actually haven't talked about yet with anybody. Which in the report, we have that implementation roadmap. And when we wrote it and designed it, we were quite careful to put automation sort of some way down the list. So the connection of the tools in the DevOps tool chain. And we did that because there is the general wisdom that we do people process tools. And, we didn't potentially want to come across that we were pushing tools into this community as vendors. We wanted it to be we want to be true to our word that what we're interested in is nurturing the community. However, following the publication of the report, there is an Australian company who picked up the report. I think they're called Flowmatics or Flowmetrics. I have to dig them out. They wrote a blog, and actually I'm going to do another quick plug for something coming out of the consortium. We are currently working on our Value Stream Management Foundation course, which will be shipping likely now in September. It will be free online to all members. We will be providing certification through a partnership with DevOps Institute as well. And in that course, I think we may offer an alternative implementation journey for Value Stream Management, which could potentially put the tooling earlier. Because as I said, one of the things that makes Value Stream Management different for me in 2021 to 2015 is that we do have the technology that allows us to connect our DevOps toolchain in a way that we've not been able to ever before. And the outcome of being able to do that is that we can automate that value stream map, which makes it so much easier to find those interventions, so we can save a lot of time. So that whole we can't find time to save time, go slow to go faster. I think it's a massive opportunity to, and I don't know how many people in the audience have seen the latest Puppet State of DevOps report, but in that, what we saw is that a huge amount of people are still stuck on their DevOps journeys. And I think it's having these sort of insights that lead to these sort of value outcomes that will really help people. And I'm going to ask Brian to respond to that, because he's been very patient listening to all of us for ages.
No, great discussions. Yeah, no, there's a lot to discuss there. You know, the way I think about it is, if you think DevOps was a big idea, VSM's even bigger. You know, there's just so many great problems to go solve. But you know, to your point, Helen, you know, when I think about VSM, the way it's going to be successful is, you know, to get a general level set of education out in the industry. You know, I think where we're at today, well, we all believe it's a must-have. I think most organizations, most CIO types are looking at it as a nice-to-have, and we've got to figure out a way to break through that. And you know, as we think about you know, how to do that at HCL Software, you know, a lot of it comes down to, you know, we've now got the data, we've got the insights, we've got the visualizations, but you know, the traditional methods just aren't going to work. You know, we can't expect developers to go look at dashboards, right? And we've got to figure out, how do we make VSM something that's valuable to everyone on a product team on a daily basis? And we think that means, you know, a reason to come into a value stream management platform and contextually have, you know, call it actionable insights, but ways that help you do your job better on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, if you just think about, you know, individuals on a product team, like a developer, what are ways to make their day better? You know, stand-ups, for example, they're relatively painful, right? Especially if you're doing it for years. You know, the traditional, you know, what did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? And what are the hurdles? Like, it gets mundane, and it feels a lot like status, and people kind of go through the motions. What if we can just have that data available on an ongoing basis? And really what the stand-up is for is to, you know, discuss the exceptions. You know, what are things that are not on plan, that are high priority, that we should be focused on? You know, and, you know, you can take it one step further with this dashboard, you know, call it dashboards are dead type mantra. Like, you can't expect a developer to go look at lead time and track lead time, you know, over the last 2 quarters to see which way we're trending. Really, they want to know, you know, what's the next best thing to do today? You know, I just checked in that code. What should I do next? And, you know, it might seem obvious, right? Go to the backlog, but the reality is there's a whole number of things that may need to be taken care of. Like, there may be pull requests sitting in queue, or there, you know, maybe other things blocked, or, you know, bottlenecked or whatnot. And so, you know, not sure I directly answered your original question there, Helen, but, you know, as I think about making value stream management valuable to the whole product team, I think there's all of those little subtle day-to-day experiences that we need to think through.
You mentioned product team there, actually, and everything you talked about was in the context of product team. Eveline knows where I'm going with this. So we touched a little bit on things organisationally around roles and things, but another really interesting piece that came out, the crunch in the research, was when we discovered that people that were value stream oriented, that is, like product oriented, were much more likely than project teams or project oriented teams, or people using waterfall ways of working, to be using flow metrics in particular, and somewhat more than platform teams as well. So Brian, was this, you know, we've been talking about moving from project to product for a long time. This is what the whole industry is doing, right? We're moving from waterfall to agile to DevOps, and whatever you want to call it. But how did you feel when you saw that data?
Yeah, I think it really reinforced, you know, what I've observed with our customers, and you know, we run a large product team here, so you know, we can see the same types of trends. You know, it's well documented, you know, the differences between projects and products, and encourage folks to go read Mick's book if they haven't seen that yet. But The reality is they're just completely different models for different purposes. It's not necessarily say projects should never be used, but the reality is that if you're looking at a sustainable product environment, it's clearly the best model. And what it does, it allows you to think about setting goals and your measurements and your day-to-day process in a much more sustainable way.
Evelyn, did you have some comments on that from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it has. I want to take everything what Brian said, ditto. But I think it also has to do with the different demographics which are working in IT. And, I've been in this forever. The only other thing I know how to do is how to cook. And unfortunately, that does not pay the US tuition for my daughters. So I have to do this. And over these years of research and meeting enterprises and vendor folks, the type of people who are in these organizations have changed. And I think they think differently. They don't think anymore in terms of projects, even so, yeah, they know they have the project to clean the dishes or do whatever the wife or the husband told them. But they think more holistically. And I think that those humans, and Helen, that's your words. Helen always talks about the humans, and I love that. These are different kind of humans. They think upstream, downstream. They are more aware of what it is they're actually delivering and should be delivering. I see that with my daughters. They're 25 and 27, and they're completely different than some of the folks who are in IT, in large enterprises. So I think that has something to do with it as well. It's not always technology. It's also that human demographics type of people who are in the businesses.
Yeah. Richard?
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on something that Brian said that really struck a chord with me in terms of like the daily meeting. And it's focused, on tasks. What did I do yesterday? What did I do today? And I think we need to have an awakening by our developers that it's much more than that. What we're really talking about is what value did I bring today to customers? And I don't want to use that pedantic type of questioning, but it's really the focus on value and what is happening with my customers. So if I could actually see what's happening from like tickets, customer complaints, or things that really made customers happy, and let's do more of that, I think that becomes a real game changer, that they're actually focusing on value. When you're in a project team, the focus is purely on completing my tasks. When you're organized around value, in a value stream, you're organized around a product or service. And so you would have this constant focus on making that service or product better and better all the time. Because otherwise, developers really aren't focused on the customer. They're just focused on getting their work done. And we know it's much beyond that. And one of the things in terms of organizing around value versus projects, I think that from a flow perspective, the most significant thing is how we organize people and organizing our teams in a value stream. And we have to be careful that we don't create new silos as we do that, because I've seen in some of the frameworks, we now created a silo perhaps around systems or some other focus within the value stream. So we have to, I really love the work that Matt and Manuel Pace have done in their book, Team Topologies, and how they talk about creating teams that are, streamlined or complex subsystems. It gives us a way to think about how to architect our teams. We don't want our solutions being architected by HR. There was a funny comic about that the architecture of a system using Conway's law, it determines how you're organized, determines how your architecture is. So in the comic it says, oh, does that mean that HR is architecting our solutions?
I saw that the other day as well. Yeah, got me thinking.
Richard, I love that idea of bringing value into the stand-up. I mean, there's so many great benefits of that. The obvious ones of the business benefit, but you just get a whole level of accountability that doesn't exist, without that model. And I think it's really motivating from a team perspective. And if it's not, you might want to ask if those are the right folks for your team.
Yeah.
Right.
When I think back to my own career experiences, I worked for an organization called insurance.com. It is the largest online auto insurance broker in the United States. And we had a model with every epic or every new business idea, we held the product managers accountable to having a business hypothesis, that there would be this business outcome from this investment. And we actually would follow up, we actually would define a timeline to it and follow up at that time to see if we got the result. And it was a formal kind of business review of everybody that invested their time into that product. And a big part of that, not only the accountability and the motivation, but it held us to a standard of defining all of those data points. Like, what is the actual business objective? What is the measurement? What is the time frame? And without those types of details, it's hard to know if you are getting your business outcomes. And if you look at it from a VSM like data-driven perspective, those are all the types of things we need to really drive today's VSM.
Yeah, otherwise, you don't know if you're making a difference, right?
Yeah, and of course the VSM can tell us if we're how we're doing on our DevOps journey. But in order to be data-driven, we need to get access to that data. And in the research, we discovered that only 30% of respondents were actually using any kind of automation to grab that data, and only 20% were implementing any kind of VSM platform. That's quite interesting in the context of Gartner's research in 2020, when they did like Gartner do, said that by 2023, 70% of organizations will have adopted this technology. So we've got less than 24 months, or around 24 months, for half the market now to adopt this stuff, which seems like quite a big ask. And I think there's two parts to this question, really. One is why and more people not doing it, and what do we need to do to help them? I think the reason people aren't doing more of it yet is because they've been busy doing other things. There's so many other parts to DevOps. And if you look at, as I mentioned, the Puppet State of DevOps report, we can see there's that 75% middle people that have got a little bit stuck and are not finding their way out of it. And perhaps that's because of things like Eveline said, that they're busy with business as usual, as people call it, BAU, and BAU doesn't include improvement. But I'm interested in your thoughts as well. So, Richard, why are we not further, and how do we help people get further?
Yeah, I think a big part of that is, first, people understanding about what value stream management is in the first place, and to be able to focus on the flow. They don't necessarily understand why there are bottlenecks in their process, and so they don't realize even though DevOps has been amazing, that if we don't focus on the flow, that we are not going to get the kind of improvements that are really possible. So I think a big part of it is education, and that's why I'm so enthusiastic about the foundations course that we're creating at the Value Stream Consortium, because I think that education is going to be key for people to understand that. And when I go to China, you'll hear something like, "We're too busy pushing our bicycle to get on it. We don't have time to sharpen the saw." So it's that thinking. I think the business as usual really gets in the way. And at my company, we're facing the same thing. We merged 5 different companies together, and now we're facing the same thing. How do we work across 5 different companies with 5 different value streams to be working together as one, to have that one portfolio mindset, that we have these common goals and common mission? And it's really hard to do at the same time that you're doing the business as usual. And I think that the point that you made about need to going slower in order to go faster is really important. And we know that about 70% of the features that we use or that we develop are not being used. So there's the opportunity to go slower. Let's do less in order to do more.
Absolutely. Brian, your opinion on why we haven't seen more adoption to date and what we can do to accelerate it in line with what we hope to see happen?
Yeah, I like a lot of what Richard suggested there. What we've seen really for years is pockets of VSM adoption. And so, any good manager worth their salt is going to want data, right? So, when we look at our roots with continuous delivery platforms, our best customers that were rolling this out to hundreds or even thousands of applications, they wanted access to the data. Is our deployment frequency improving? What's our success rates, so on and so forth. But that was very siloed, right? And you probably have similar types of things across, say, centers of excellence for quality, or these other different subsections of value stream management. What we've also seen, though, is product teams adopt more comprehensively value stream management, but it's very localized to, say, a business unit or just kind of a smaller organization. And so what we need to do is kind of like vertical and we've got some vertical and horizontal adoption, but we need it at a much more of an enterprise scale. And I think it comes back to Richard's points around education and this notion of making a must-have rather than a nice-to-have, because people recognize the value that VSM is providing.
Absolutely. So Evelyn, you've seen quite a few markets come and go, I think, through your career. And what advice would you give us as vendors and people that are hoping to support the community to not lose our way on this, but really help it happen?
Yeah, I think it takes stamina, right? Perseverance, of course, but also it takes leadership. And I think the consortium is an excellent example of that leadership. And it sometimes really moves me to see how these different vendors are getting together. In many conversations, I mentioned the consortium and explain what its purpose, and most people are like, wow, you mean these and these guys get together? Yeah, it's possible. That hasn't happened in some of the other markets relative to, be it ESM or ITSM or you name them, right? Which is, I think, wonderful. I think that's one thing. And the second, it also needs metrics, and to some extent, I hate to use the word standard metrics, but I think that's what it really boils down to. It doesn't matter which, in an enterprise, maybe there is multiple solutions being used, right? Some maybe use HCL, some might use digital AI, some might use something else. But having this comparison of understanding what gets measured gets done, and having like a flow metric meaning the same thing as somewhere else when I look at that, and that don't get into the arguments, oh, well, this data comes from there or this data comes from there. I think that's a second challenge. And so my call to the consortium is, to some extent, is it a data model, or is it above and beyond what we have with DORA, that people can actually say, yeah, this is sanctioned, or this is kind of my best practice model, kind of like Adam is with the TBM Council, very similar in a different space. Or in financial industries, right? We've got data where we know the general ledger has certain items, and if it says revenue, that's what it means. And so I think that's the second part I would call for action.
Yeah, and we are absolutely on the track for doing, we're referring to it to as good practice over best practice and open standards rather than standards. So we're hoping the community will help us with that. And in the report, people can find quite a lot of narrative already around the differences between lead and cycle time and the various different points where you can start and end measurement. So we're definitely going to do more research and provide more advice on how people can get a handle on that and make sure that people are all looking, or know they're all looking and thinking about the same thing. But just one more question to you on that topic. We talk about change fatigue a lot, about, we've been through all these different cycles of e-business and SOA and all these different things. So in a lot of organizations, there's change fatigue, and there'll be multiple transformation programs going on all the time. But I wonder, Evelyn, if you think there's also an investment fatigue at the CXO level, where people are saying, I've spent so much money on Agile and DevOps already, and I'm not seeing a result. Why throw money at VSM now?
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent point, Helen. How many CXOs have said, I'm not going to invest in another tool or in another methodology until I see the ROI? And I think Brian said it at the beginning. I think, Richard, you alluded to it as well. Having the ROI of what does that do, not just for the IT organization, of course, that's important. But really, truly, for those who are working day to day, selling, caring for patients, delivering the post, sending the Amazon package or whatever they're doing, having that ROI for the business, so they actually can see that this is worthwhile doing. And that many markets have failed, no matter if it's started with an A or it started with a Z. So I think that is important.
Perfect. And we have just about 5 minutes left now. So we're going to go with our last question, then we'll close out and I'll announce those Amazon gift card winners. I want to talk to the team about what they want to see in the 2022 report. So, for example, I'm really keen on getting a handle on what those metrics actually look like for people. So what does good cycle time look like? What does poor cycle time look like in the lower performing organizations, for example? Richard, what kind of things do you want to see in the 2022 report?
Yeah, I think there are like 3 things that I would like to see in the next report, and that is, how do we measure the value of our transformation efforts? You know, whether it's VSM, whether it's Agile, Lean, that's always the age-old question. And we can't make advancement unless we can answer those type of questions. Number 2 is more information on value stream practices. What are the things that people are doing that is making a difference? And I think the 3rd thing is about roles. So we have gotten some information about roles, but we kind of put out there what we think the roles are. I would like to hear from others what roles, for them, are they using? Is it the business as usual roles? Have they moved people into new roles? So I think that's going to be a very important part to make this tangible.
Brian, what do you want to see in 2022?
Yeah, I like that last one Richard had. We find so much of the challenge with VSM is just around organizational change. But one of the other areas we really didn't touch on today is, what I would describe as automated governance. So there's this whole, potential benefit of VSM to help streamline, our ability to kind of get through process, right? And so, a big part of these value stream management platforms is aggregating data across the tool chain, and with that data, you can make life a whole lot easier for things like change review boards, or for auditors. And, I'm curious to see what the pickup is in the industry to really moving the needle in that area. Are we creating capability that, is making a difference, in enterprises, or, is it something that, it's just too early or just not a great idea? So more of a focus in that governance area would be interesting to me.
Perfect. Let's make sure that's in there. And just to comment on the role stuff, since you said you're keen on it too. Me too. And as well as the annual report. So we're planning to do micro research, and we actually did a little bit already because we needed some info for the foundation course. So we did a little bit of investigation into the Value Stream architect role. So we can definitely do more micro research until we deliver the full big release next year. Final word from Eveline before I give out those gift card winners. Eveline, what are you hoping we're going to find next year?
Yeah, I want to add to what Richard said in terms of roles. It's also capabilities and skills, as I think roles are great, but if I don't have the capabilities and skills necessary to do, and as I'm doing research in the upskilling of enterprises with the DevOps Institute, the skills and capabilities are key to me to understand.
Perfect. Let's do those Amazon gift card winners, and then we will roll ourselves out of here. So Amazon gift card winners are Harvey W, Nick B, Ralph W, and Morris G. So congratulations to all of you. Massive thank you to the whole audience for being here today and being lovely and chatty. I hope you've enjoyed what you've heard. You can become a Value Stream Management Consortium member. The link is up the top. We're all around all the time, so just track us down on LinkedIn. If you've got specific questions, you want to have a chat with us, let us know. And then finally, a massive thank you to today's panel. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Brian, and thank you to the lovely Eveline, my partner in crime on this particular report. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. Thank you, panel.
Nice job, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun.
Good.